4 a.m. BST, Nikki Haley, U.S. ambassador to the UN, said the missile test sent a message to South Korea after the election of President Moon Jae-in last week. Mrs. Haley said, "You first have to get into Kim Jong-un's head, which is, he's in a state of paranoia, he's incredibly concerned about anything and everything around him." She added the U.S. will continue to tighten the screws on North Korea, citing sanctions and cooperation with the international community to put pressure on Pyongyang. 5 a.m. BST, the South Korea's presidential office, known as the Blue House, said the newly elected President Moon Jae-in strongly condemns the new missile test. The Blue House's press secretary said, "The president said while South Korea remains open to the possibility of dialogue with North Korea, it is only possible when North Korea shows a change in attitude." South Korea has sent special envoys to the US, China, Germany, Japan and Russia to explain the new government's policy towards North Korea. 6 a.m. BST, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said, "We will continue to closely coordinate with the United States and South Korea to respond to the North Korea's situation." 7 a.m. BST, the White House said, "With the missile impacting so close to Russian soil, in fact, closer to Russia than to Japan, the president cannot imagine that Russia is pleased." 8 a.m. BST, North Korea's KCNA state news agency has claimed that it successfully tested a newly developed mid-long-range strategic ballistic rocket, Hwasong-12. The test fire aimed at verifying the tactical and technological specifications of the newly developed ballistic rocket capable of carrying a large-size heavy nuclear warhead, it said. The missile reached an altitude of more than 1,245 miles and is thought to have crashed in the Sea of Japan, about 60 miles from Vladivostok near the Russian border. If the U.S. provokes the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, it will not escape from the biggest disaster in the history, Kim Jong-un was quoted as saying. Kim Jong-un said, "The coward American-style fanfrenade militarily browbeating only weak countries and nations which have no nukes can never work on the DPRK." 10 a.m. BST, North Korea's apparently successful missile launch indicates a substantial advance in its drive for an intercontinental ballistic missile, according to monitors. The range of the missile represents a level of performance never before seen from a North Korean missile, Washington-based monitoring Project 38 North said in an analysis. It appears to have not only demonstrated an intermediate-range ballistic missile that might enable them to reliably strike the U.S. base at Guam, but more importantly, may represent a substantial advance to developing an intercontinental ballistic missile, it said. The U.S. military's Pacific Command has said that the type of missile that was fired was not consistent with an ICBM. 11 a.m. BST, North Korea's ambassador to China claimed the CIA and South Korean intelligence conspired secretly and meticulously in hatching their plot to use radioactive or nano-poisonous substances to assassinate Kim Jong-un. "We believe this extreme crime was orchestrated by hostile forces in order to damage North Korea's domestic affairs," Ambassador Ji Ryong said. 12 p.m. BST, Vladimir Putin has said the world should talk to North Korea rather than threaten it after the latest missile test escalated tensions in the region. The Russian president said, "This missile launch presented no threat to us, but it of course escalates this conflict and there is nothing good about that." Putin said nuclear tests of the type that Pyongyang had been carrying out were unacceptable, but that a peaceful solution to rising tensions on the Korean peninsula was needed. He added, "We need to return to dialogue with North Korea and stop scaring it and find ways to resolve these problems peacefully." The missile reached an altitude of more than 1,245 miles and is thought to have crashed in the Sea of Japan, near to the Russian town of Vladivostok. 2 p.m. BST, North Korea says it will continue to carry out intercontinental ballistic missile launches anytime, any place, defying UN Security Council resolutions. The test firing of ICBMs will occur at any time and place, at the will of North Korea's highest leadership, North Korea's ambassador to China, Ji Ryong, told the press in Beijing. The UN Security Council is expected to meet tomorrow to discuss the North's latest missile launch at the request of the US, South Korea and Japan. North Korea threat, US monitoring claim missile could carry nuclear warhead. U.S. officials are closely monitoring the aftermath of the latest North Korean missile test after the rogue regime claimed that its newest rocket was capable of carrying a nuclear warhead, and that its arsenal could reach American shores. One day after Kim Jong-un's dictatorship reported a successful test flight of its KN-17 missile, state-run news agency KCNA reported the U.S. mainland and Pacific operations were in range of North Korean weapons. The agency also claimed its missile was meant to verify the specifications of a new ballistic rocket capable of carrying a large-size heavy nuclear warhead. "We are monitoring," a National Security Council spokeswoman told Fox News. The U.S. has long been skeptical that Pyongyang has the technology to mount a nuclear warhead. A senior administration official said the White House was warily assessing the latest news out of North Korea, given the country's propensity to push misleading and exaggerated propaganda. However, the official said if the latest claim is true, it would be a cause for great concern. Underscoring the gravity of the situation, one U.S. official told Fox News that Pyongyang took a step forward with its Sunday launch. The missile flew 4 minutes longer than any previous ballistic missile test in the history of the communist regime, U.S. officials told Fox News, though North Korea had conducted space launches in the past that have flown longer than KN-17, including a mission in February 2016 that sent a satellite into orbit on Super Bowl Sunday. After 3 failures last month, Sunday's liftoff was the first successful test of the liquid-fueled KN-17, which some experts see as North Korea's best chance to develop a reliable intercontinental ballistic missile. Aerospace expert John Schilling told Reuters the test represents a level of performance never before seen from a North Korean missile. It appears to have not only demonstrated an intermediate-range ballistic missile that might enable them to reliably strike the U.S. base at Guam, Schilling said, but more important, may represent a substantial advance to developing an intercontinental ballistic missile. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley warned Sunday that the international community will continue to tighten the screws around the North Korean regime. She told ABC This Week that Kim is in a state of paranoia. Meanwhile, U.S. officials are looking at taking precautions. Senator Dan Sullivan, our Alaska, is planning to introduce a measure this week to add another 28 ground-based interceptors in Alaska and California and authorize additional missile defense testing, Fox News is told. North Korea has released images of the country's latest missile launch, showing leader Kim Jong-un passionately celebrating the missile test. The hermit state tested a ballistic missile early on Sunday, from the northwestern city of Kaesong, marking the 6th launch this year. Rodong Sinmun, North Korea's state-run newspaper, released a collection of images showing the missile launch and the reactions of the generals in charge of the test. One image shows Kim clenching his fist and grinning while a monitor in the background shows the trajectory of a missile, believed to be one of the secret of state's new developments capable of reaching targets at a greater distance. There are also pictures of the missile itself, believed to be a Hwasong-12 rocket. Kim Jong-un is pictured looking on as the rocket is transported to the launch site, while there is also a range of images showing the launch of the missile. North Korean troops and generals can be seen celebrating along with their supreme leader after the missile test, which has been condemned by world leaders. The White House released a statement, which read, "With the missile impacting so close to Russian soil, in fact, closer to Russia than to Japan, the president cannot imagine that Russia is pleased." The statement also urged other nations to implement greater sanctions against Pyongyang in a bid to rein in its nuclear weapons and missile development programs. While Russian officials have not yet reacted to the launch, South Korean and Japanese foreign ministers have held talks to discuss the latest missile threat to the region. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said, "We will continue to closely coordinate with the United States and South Korea to respond to the North Korea's situation." He also confirmed that Shotaro Yachi, Abe's top security advisor, had spoken to U.S. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. The latest missile launch is believed to have been used to test South Korea's new President Moon Jae-in, who was only sworn in on Thursday. The South Korean Presidential Office, known as the Blue House, said Moon strongly condemns the latest missile launch. Moon Young-chan, the Blue House's press secretary, said, The president said while South Korea remains open to the possibility of dialogue with North Korea, it is only possible when North Korea shows a change in attitude. The First Korean War, largely forgotten by the American public and the planet, tragically took the lives of 2.5 million people. A potential Second Korean War, with both sides armed with nuclear weapons, could turn cities like Seoul, Tokyo and soon Los Angeles into atomic ash heaps, with countless dead and large sections of such metropolises uninhabitable for generations. These are the stakes when it comes to the nightmare that is today North Korea, not in some faraway future, but in the here and now. Therefore, every time the portly pariah of Pyongyang, Kim Jong-un, tests a new missile or detonates a nuclear weapon, we should pause and reflect on the dire situation we find ourselves in. So let there be no doubt, Saturday's missile test won't be the last. To build a viable nuclear weapons arsenal and missiles to carry them to a target, Kim must test them repeatedly. Even in failure, North Korea gains valuable data for the next test, and eventually, a weapon that can lay waste to our homeland. And despite decades of dramatic ups and downs, patience has paid off for Pyongyang. Even with an economy smaller than Ethiopia, the Kim regime possesses around 12 to 20 nuclear weapons and can add to that stockpile every 6 or 7 weeks. But from there it gets worse. A dictator like Kim Jong-un is not crazy, just crazy like a fox about ensuring his own survival. He already murders his own people daily, with 200,000 of them in what can only be described as Nazi-style death camps. Pyongyang has amassed as much as 5,000 tons of chemical weapons and the means to sling them all over Asia. Combined with an army of over 1 million men, 4,300 tanks and thousands of pieces of artillery and rocket launchers that could lob shells into Seoul, a metro area of 25 million people, the most densely populated on the planet, North Korea has all the awful ingredients to start a conflict not seen since the end of World War II. But for such weapons to be a threat, they need to move from stats on a page to missiles in the air. The question we need to ask ourselves is obvious: would Kim really use such weapons? The answer is a resounding yes. You see, a dictator like Kim Jong-un is not crazy, just crazy like a fox about ensuring his own survival. He already murders his own people daily, with 200,000 of them in what can only be described as Nazi-style death camps. He has killed any rival that stands in his way, doing whatever it takes to survive. Kim even killed his own half-brother, using chemical weapons in a crowded airport, sending the most sinister of messages to any potential foe. If Kim won't bat an eye to kill his own countrymen or even his own family, then launching strikes against South Korea, Japan or even America if he feels threatened is not a stretch. Considering multiple administrations, both Democrat and Republican, have been ineffective in halting the growth of North Korea's weapons programs, it is time for President Trump to move as aggressively as possible to confront this challenge. There are 3 immediate steps the Trump administration can take to contain North Korea's atomic aspirations. First, the U.S. must do all it can to ensure that Pyongyang receives no outside help for its missile or nuclear weapons programs. Tough secondary sanctions should be applied to any country, corporation, bank or person that considers it acceptable to help North Korea build such worrisome weapons. A precedent must be set: if you wish to help the roguest of rogue states build weapons of mass destruction, you will pay the highest of prices. Second, America, along with its allies, must do everything they can to set back the North Korean nuclear and missile programs as much possible, while also increasing the costs to develop more advanced technologies. The Trump administration must use cyber technology, malware, viruses etc., just as the Bush and Obama administrations did in the case of Iran's nuclear program, to frustrate North Korea's scientists at every turn. With various outlets reporting such efforts are likely underway, a top-down review should be conducted to ensure we are fully utilizing cyber against North Korea as much as possible. Third, and most important, the Trump administration must build up regional and homeland missile defenses to nullify Pyongyang's growing arsenal. THAAD not only must remain in South Korea but also be deployed to Japan. U.S. missile defense systems in Alaska must also be expanded dramatically, a recent plan by Senator Dan Sullivan calling for a 30% increase in interceptors there should be implemented. Clearly there are no easy solutions for a problem that is decades in the making. However, the Trump administration must press forward to ensure the North Korea threat does not get any worse or gains the capability to hold America hostage by atomic means.